You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Remax Palm Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely gorgeous Northport, Florida. A good shout out to Peter and Mark at Remax Palm Realty for sponsoring our tower. Another shout out to another major sponsor, Lions Title and Trust on Toledo Blade, 2559 Toledo Blade. They do a fantastic job with your closings. So utilize them for any of your closing or real estate needs. They're fantastic. And also Allstate Hardin Insurance Group on Toledo Blade, 2559 Toledo Blade, another major sponsor, not just in this show, but at our radio station. And we are looking forward to building more relationships as that continues on. So if you're looking for a sponsorship at the radio station, you can call my number directly, 941-391-4663. And you can also reach out to the radio station and talk with them. But we would be more than happy to have this conversation to promote your business and any other needs that you may have, even show topics. So we'll talk to you soon on that. Special guest in the house today is Elaine Emmerich, who is part of the newspaper local and also is a good friend and part of the Northport Kiwanis, who my Northport Buckeyes work directly with to sponsor kids for Christmas. We've had this relationship for a long time, but brought her on the air today to really highlight what the Kiwanis is all about. Plus, we just went through a major election, and I had some questions in regards to how the newspaper, how they handled things like that. So let's go down the track and learn a little bit about Elaine and what she does. How you doing, Elaine?
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. So, we just went through an election, and not that this is the hot topic, but I think it's one of the hottest topics out here right now. How do you think the newspaper locally handled not just the politics of the national election, but local? What's your feel with the newspaper and how they targeted things?
So locally, what we do is when a candidate files their paperwork to run for office and then they qualify, they are an actual candidate. So then you get with them and you say, let's set up a time that we can talk about why are you running. I always ask your age, not to be a jerk, but it's part of who you are. And look, you could be like the youngest person ever running for office in an area, or you could be, the oldest one. And then we really ask some of the deeper questions. For me, because I've been a reporter for 30 years, I'm obviously going to know a little bit more deep subject matter. So even if you're a new candidate, I want to know, okay, so did you sit through the budget hearing? Did you look over the budget? What's the most pressing thing in the budget? How do you like those land development codes that were just passed? You have an in-house attorney. Other areas have a attorney that is a regular paid employee. What's the difference? Why do you think one is more important than the other? And then, hey, hurricane response. You're going to be a city commissioner, city council member, county commissioner. How will that impact you if there is a mass disaster and then all of a sudden you have a huge amount of damage like Punta Gorda did? How are you going to handle that? So I would say we ask a lot of questions, and we don't sugarcoat a lot of things because that's not what the voters want. They want to read real information about who you are and why you're running. And then, a lot of people don't know this, then what happens is the editorial board, who is not me. So I'm a reporter, I'm not an editorial writer. So the editorial board, then there's like 3 or 4 editors that get together and they question the candidate. And so, yes, they're asking maybe some of the same questions I did, but it's a little bit more casual for them to sit around a table and talk, talk about the facts, talk about the issues and their experiences. And then what happens is the board gets together, the editorial board gets together, and they determine who out of the 2 or 3 or 5 candidates kind of rose to the top as far as who they believe should be recommended. So it's a process. It's
I'm going to say this because we all look at newspaper different today than we did in the past. The paper 20 years ago had viewerships and that was like the push to have viewerships with papers in their hands. That's not necessarily the case today, because online readers are valuable to a newspaper too. And you guys do a good job of trying to get both of those out. You're still doing print. I've got a good friend, Dave Cater, who really is all over the newspaper. He loves to be able just to open up the newspaper, not so much the computer whiz. So it's like we're still favoring both, right?
I would sure hope so. And one of the reasons I still think that newspapers are very, very important is because they're the ones that have to do the work. It's one thing to go online and now newspapers online, absolutely, yes, but it's another thing to like go on like a TikTok video, and try to learn about a candidate when in fact it might not have been generated by a journalist. And so
so let me stay there for a second, because there's some real true value in what you're saying, because I'm a huge proponent of pushing content out and trying to get like the voice of the people along with the content provider, because content providers, and if you're a candidate, you also have that problem getting that content out that is your content, that you want people to hear who you are. And you're right, you can't learn that on TikTok in a 20-second bleep, and you can do that if you listen to 15 or 20 of them in a row. You might get a whole segue, but having that information at your fingertips, on whether it be in your newspaper or on an online subscription through the newspaper, those things are vital in capturing some information that you normally wouldn't capture, right?
Well, we on the newspaper online site, we have breaking news. And so what's cool about breaking news is, again, you have a journalist reporting the information on, like, things that have happened that the newspaper deems as like it just happened. So, when they do declare a tropical storm has become a hurricane, we, will put it out as breaking news, and then locally explain to you, what does that mean? Where are your evacuation zones? Or there's a ton of things that go with hurricanes that we in the media have learned to work directly with cities and counties locally. Because the Weather Channel, they're going to tell people on a grand scale about destruction and this and that, but we're going to tell you, look, only Zone A is being evacuated right now. But if you live in Zone B, they're talking about it. Or if you live in Zone A and you need transportation, this is how Charlotte County does it. This is how Sarasota County does it. And, there's even, something that's really important that people don't often know is the 911 system over in Inglewood. If you call in one area, you're in Sarasota County. If you call as you drive across that line, you cross over to Charlotte. And so ahead of a hurricane, you got to tell people this stuff. And I'm telling you, that's the value of having newspaper reporters, because it's things that we know and understand. We can give really, really good examples. Like, look, if you chose not to evacuate, here's what you need to know. The ambulance can't come to you. The fire truck can't come and get you, and the police can't, or the deputies cannot come because the winds are too high and they can't submit themselves to danger. Otherwise, they really couldn't come after the storm. And the thing about that is getting the reader to understand why. And the why is because you are told to evacuate for a reason, and it's to be somewhere where it is safe and there are first responders. And so again, the National Weather Service isn't going to tell you that, but your local news reporters will.
You know, I'm trying to lay this out in my head how to say it, but you know, I worked in the EOC for the city of Northport with WKDW radio, pushing content out and trying to get information to the citizens. I learned a lot through that process, but in talking with you, and we talk a lot about the newspaper and different aspects and different things that are happening in the newspaper that aren't happening at City Hall. You know, we've had a discussion on the mosquitoes and different things like that, and things of importance, while they're highlighted in different areas of government, the reporting side of it really does a deeper dive into some of these things that are out there. Is that what you're talking about in how
I look at it? Here's the way I look at it. The other day, I was at a city meeting down in Punta Gorda, and it lasted, let's say, 4.5 hours. So what I would do is I would pick out the most important points and then give information back to the readers, so that if they don't have time to sit there for 4.5 hours, or if they're interested in knowing a certain subject, and I happen to write about it because it was important, then the reader gets kind of a gift from journalists, because we go to meetings. I've sat through 12-hour meetings, and you pick the 4 important points. And you know what's incredible is local governments give real updates about how Ian still affects them. Charlotte County has $200 million in claims that they've pretty much sent through Hurricane Ian. They've received back approximately 40 million. That's like one storm. So when you're given like a list, like here are the docks that are not going to come back online anytime soon, or here's the amount of sand that actually left Inglewood Beach, and you can't go play in that sand because there could be like dangerous things in there. Again, these are like details that unless you watch that meeting, the reporter is going to pull those really important facts out of what the staff has said and give it back to you in a way that, you know, reading an article should take 4 or 5 minutes. And I don't believe when people say they don't have time to read the newspaper, because they always have time to scroll through their phone. And I don't believe that headlines are always what we should read. We try our very best to get voices in our stories, so that it's not our opinions. It's, you know, people that you've quoted from the meeting, or when you're doing a feature story, people who are involved in whatever subject you're reporting.
How hard is it to be a reporter today compared to 10 years ago?
I would say that social media really, some days it helps incredibly, because we don't have Rolodexes on our desk anymore, and you know, finding cell phone numbers isn't always as easy. So you can jump online and talk to somebody and then say, "Hey, can I give you a call?" So that's kind of great. But you know, I would say that social media has really kind of messed with journalism, because there, you know, I know that we as journalists say, oh my gosh, that's not what happened. That's not how it happened. And you write a story that, I'll tell, listen, I call police departments, public information officers, police, fire, school district, and you literally say, I'm chasing a rumor because we don't report rumors, we report facts. So was there a bomb threat at the school today? And then they're like, no, the bomb threat was 3 doors down, but we did a lockdown because the kids are all secure and we went into our standard emergency mode. And you're like, ta-da, that's the truth. Yep. But, the online can be like, there was a bomb threat at the school. And you're like, no.
I do have a question. I don't know if Facebook is doing this today, so I'm not sure who it's from. It says Facebook user today. So we've had some updates on the platform that I'm going to have to go back in and recheck and readjust. But the question is, what is your take on the print publications switching to digital platforms, and what do you see the future of reporting to be?
I'll say that obviously online, we do it.
That was from Robin's. Hey, Robin, how you doing?
Hey, Robin. Yeah, I believe that digital platforms, obviously we're all, the newspaper has a very healthy, the Sun has a very healthy online presence. Here's the thing. People are always going to need the reporter. So, you're going to need somebody who's trained to ask the questions and decipher, the important stuff to put into articles, whether they're online. And, one of the things that they've asked us to do is get a 10-second video so that you can include these, they're always adding new stuff. We tag our stories so that if, like, let's say I'm talking about Peace River Wildlife Center, and you see it online, you can double click on, or just click on it, and then it'll take you from my story to Peace River Wildlife Center. So we're adapting. We're going, as far as digital goes. And I think that's a wonderful help, because if I write a story about what has happened to Peace River Wildlife Center, and then somebody wants the complete list that maybe I couldn't get in the paper or online, boom, they can click and there it is, and they didn't have to go look it up. Here's the other thing. Online, we can add additional photos. And I love that. As somebody who takes a ton of photos, I like that if they can go online, that we can offer more there. So that, you're not going to get rid of reporters. You're going to need them regardless of the platform.
And it's going to adjust as it goes. And you're right about how the digital side, it's all going to, at some point, I hate to say it, but at some point, it's probably all going to be digital. And now we're talking a while out, but things are going that direction. What's that?
I have to go pick up my granddaughter, but I
take a ride with you in the car.
I've committed, so.
Yeah, well, you've got things happening too, and I'm glad that you're part of the show, even though you're going to be mobile here for a bit. It's having insight on the politics side after an election cycle we had on a national scale. How do you cover the national scale at your newspaper? Would be Trump against Kamala Harris. How did you guys handle that? Is that handled differently?
The Associated Press will handle those national stories. They have reporters assigned to each candidate, but then we make it local. So then we give a call to the Republican club. We give a call to the Democratic club, and we ask them questions. And you know what? So locally, I met some great people on both sides, and they talked about issues. They talked about what was important to them and why their candidate mattered. And I didn't have like
Oh, we froze. We froze for a second. She'll come back in a minute, but we're actually talking with Elaine Emmerich, and she is picking up her granddaughter, and we were having a conversation. Hold on, you kind of cut out there,
Yep.
and you kind of froze up when you were talking about how you did the local connecting with the local clubs.
So locally, I did the council members, and then we get asked to go kind of do a man on the street, right? You want to know what the feel is, like for early voting or for election day. But I will tell you something that was very, very interesting this time was because there was conversations about, well, how is the election process? Is it fair? What happens? Like, I learned so much more literally after 30 years. I learned that how ballots are actually counted in Charlotte County. You have a Republican sitting across the table from a Democrat. One person pulls the information out of the envelope, and then the other one looks it over, and then it gets put into a pile because they both agree. And I was like, wow, like I didn't know that. And then you have people that are allowed to watch the process, obviously, but it was just neat because it seems pretty balanced when you have both sides being able to watch the process. So it was, but we had to report that, and we didn't do so much of that last time. So I was all right with like educating even myself.
Well, and so you got to analyze in person how secure our voting is, and how both parties are really working together to secure the vote.
Absolutely. And and I guess even down to like, I had to ask for the first time a couple of years ago, well, what kind of equipment does the supervisor of election use for voting machines? And the answer was not Dominion. And I was like, so.
You hold on. You kind of blocked out there from sound. So just wait a minute. Your sound went away. So we're talking with Elaine Emmerich about the at least it's not Dominion voting machines. So as soon as she comes back online and I can hear her, we'll talk more. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean like, oh, it's not Dominion, like it was a bad thing, because it's not a bad thing. The point, though, that I was told is, hey, we don't use Dominion. So if people, again, you chase rumors, if people are saying, oh, well, you can't trust those, that's not quite the deal, because that's not the machines they use. So that's all I'm getting at is, you tend to chase rumors sometimes, and you get to the bottom of things as a reporter. And I just don't think online that always happens from different sources. But the newspaper is always going to fact check. That is our job.
Well, that's good though, but it's kind of cool when you actually learn something that's happening out there too, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. I enjoyed, like, I've never had to ask those questions, but like you said, you adapt, and that's what I adapted to, was the fact that I would ask more questions. Supervisors of elections are transparent. They want to educate the public, and I think that people may have thought that wasn't the case, but I really, truly, I ask the questions, and then if you have to, you make public records requests, and you get to the information that way. But it's I think it was really healthy to tell people locally, here's what the process is. And oh, here's one other thing that, like people didn't know. So everybody probably thinks that, when you vote in Florida, it's very similar to other places. Well, in Florida, they allow you to do the counting of early voting at 7 p.m. And then they allow you to do the early voting, the military, everything that isn't the day of is done at 7. So it's amazing because you're able to get those numbers pretty quickly. In places, I think it was like Michigan, they didn't close till 8. There was another one that didn't close till 9. So when people think, oh, well, like we got those results in Florida, why didn't we get them in other places? Well, it's because in other places they close later. They don't count until the polls close. So, not that you need to educate yourself about all of that, but when you understand why, like, oh, it's done differently here than it is in other states, you're like, oh, that's why we're waiting. And that's, it's good to know.
So I think a lot of times they're also trying to catch up with their reputation, because it's been tarnished over the last several voting cycles, with all the close calls and mishaps and machine breakdowns. I think our systems are actually getting better at each election cycle. And I think go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the reason is because when they find either the glitch or they find, okay, something broke down at this precinct, they really do, they work hard to correct those problems.
Fantastic. So, at the beginning of the show, I talked about the relationship that we have with Kiwanis as far as the Buckeye Group and sponsoring Kids for Christmas. Can we talk about some of the things that are going on right now with Kiwanis? And I know you're picking up your granddaughter now, so.
And I guess apparently I was late because she's sitting here.
Yeah, had to chase her down, did you?
Hey, Evelyn, you're on the radio. Say hello.
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 Okay, we're good again.
Yeah, so you've got a lot going on with Kiwanis. You've got the holiday cards at City Hall coming up, right?
Yep.
And,
we've Holiday Card Lane is a program that we do with over at City Hall. It's like giant cards that are used to send a message to the community. And they're up until after the Ukraine New Year, because we recognize, that culture as well. And then one of the other really, really important things we do during Christmas is toys for kids for Christmas. It's Kiwanis Christmas. So what we do now is we go to, I'm here at Atwater, right? So we would go to Atwater and we would talk to the counselor and we would say, so tell us about the number of kids that have needs that aren't in Toys for Tots, that aren't in the city's program, and tell us what they need and then what they want. And it is always incredible when you still have families who need socks and underwear, or they just need clothing as opposed to toys. And so we work with the guidance counselors and we take that information and we put it on a tree at Perkins. And then we ask the community to help us and the Ohio State Buckeyes Club to help us. And what we do is we gather in the stuff, we bag it up, we deliver it back to the school. Sometimes, though, what happens is a child will want, let's say 3 things, and a bag will come back with one thing in it. And is, So then Kiwanis will jump in with the help of groups like the Ohio State Twisted Buckeyes, and we'll go shopping for those items that are needed, so that it kind of rounds out the bag. And it's just, we know with the Hurricane Ian was like really horrible for people, and there were still people locally whose cars flooded, and now they have an expense that they didn't have before hurricane season. So we're working, like we're mentally preparing ourselves that there's going to be like more kids than what we had anticipated. So
there's a lot of groups, and I like between all of us, we're so connected to the nonprofit organizations out there. The Shop with the Cops do a great job. The Awaken Church with their food drive and all that they give back to the community. What you guys do, the Northport Forward is a nonprofit organization that gives back all year round to supporting information to citizens. The radio station, we're nonprofit and we're constantly giving back. My Buckeye group is not a nonprofit. My Buckeye group is a group of people who watch Ohio State football, and we do a food drive every week, and we do the fundraisers all year long to help kids for Christmas. And that's been 19 years of running that organization. Never really truly thought 19 years ago that watching and we'd have the impact locally because of connecting with organizations like yours and Awaken Church and different parts of our community. I real quick story I'll tell about the group, because I was telling the new people that came into the organization, yeah, we watch football, but here's why you have a 50-50 drawing, and here's why we do raffles, here's why we do all these things. And I told the story about a hurricane a few years back, Ian, and the impact that it had on one of our local Buckeyes that we didn't know. One of our Buckeye family members in my group told us about her as an individual. And so we took funds, we restocked her refrigerator, that all of her food went bad. She was on a set budget, and we took care of her. And I was telling the story, and she turned around and she goes, "And you did a great job." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know you were here. I had no clue." She came into the room unannounced. So no matter how you look at things, you never know who's watching. You never know the story. I can promise you that. So you better get your facts right. You better tell the story right. You get corrected real quick. But you don't know what an impact you make for individuals out there until that moment happens. And I promise you, and promise the listeners, you've had these moments. You've had that impact. That's why you continue to fight through a lot of these things that people struggle with. We all know that economies are up and down. They're all over the place. And I don't care who the president is. Don't care. Because no matter who the president is in our country, someone is suffering out there. Not everyone is taken care of because of a change of a president. And we all need to remember that the world doesn't stop spinning because there is a change of a president. And don't lose family, don't lose faith, and keep your focus on the things that are most important to you. And if it's the president of the United States, stop it. You have one vote. I have one vote. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is vote, take your responsibility seriously, and keep your friends and your family close, because the world is going to continue. And organizations like yours aren't guided by who the president is it?
No, not at all. Nope. In fact, Kiwanis is global. So we're in countries where drinking water isn't good, or where women are having issues and all they need is a little bit of iodine, and then their pregnancy can go, normal. And so we do recognize global issues, but not presidents. It's not to say that. So what I like about Kiwanis, this is what I will say, is we're supposed to do a community needs assessment. And so not many organizations like commit to doing that. So, and I kind of joke that's how you get really you get ineffective things that groups like to do over and over and over again, thinking that they're maybe making a difference when it's just turned into a tradition rather than something that might be helpful or meaningful. And I'm not going to lie when I tell you that after Hurricane Ian, when, you know, a tornado went through the Salvation Army. So when you called them and said, hey, will you guys be serving meals? We have some volunteers and they want to help. We got told, no, we're not okay. And then through reporting, I met up with One World Kitchen. And one of the things he asked was, hey, do you know anybody who can help us? Because I got to be in Englewood, but I can leave food in Northport, but I need somebody to oversee it. So we got together volunteers from When All Else Fails and Kiwanis, and they were out there every day at Save-A-Lot giving meals. And then we realized, but wait a minute, the mobile home parks, they have down power lines. They're trapped. They can't get out. So then we were bringing meals to them. Then we went to Willow Creek, 55 and older community, only to learn that some of those people had been in there for 9 days. They were stuck on the second floor because they didn't have the elevator was out and they're in a wheelchair. And so one of them needed medical attention. Now, mind you, Kiwanis is like, you know, that group that does Christmas and breakfast with Santa. But you know what? The community need after Hurricane Ian for 9 solid months was to make sure that people got food, cleaning supplies, clothing, and anything else that we as Kiwanians could possibly give to them. And that was all while we lost our building. We had a great building and Ian took it from us.
Right. Well, and I'm going to say this because we started out with the reporter side of things. And, you know, I started doing this show 7 years ago, and all these things they're interconnected for a lot of reasons, because I think doing the show very similar to reporting, because I'm on 4 or 5 days a week sometimes, but I find myself now learning so much about other organizations that you're always on the fly, you're always adjusting. And even with the Buckeye Group, there's a focus we do, but then we adjust and we fill needs. And Kiwanis is no different. The other organizations, they're no different. But I think kind of waking people up to the conversation that it's just not one faceted is really important. And it's important from your aspect because as a reporter, you're actually covering them all at some point in time. And you're talking about different topics. Talk about that coalition that you've built now because of your years of being a reporter.
I think that it allows you to connect people. Every once in a while, somebody will watch me as I'm taking notes and I think of something and I'm like, oh my gosh, this will work with this. And then you can almost say to that person, well, have you gone and gotten help from this place, or have you spoke to that place? The other day I was at Meals on Wheels in Port Charlotte, and Meals on Wheels is incredible. They take food to homebound individuals. Listen, Meals on Wheels doesn't exist in every city throughout, or every county throughout the United States. And so they had a need. And I had said to them, well, you know what? The chamber over in Englewood was trying to get people to do like what you're needing. And I was like, hey, if you talk to this person, maybe they can give you more information. And that's kind of neat because it allows them, I mean, listen, I'm still going to write about it because there's still, 18 other things that they told me about. But when, a group is struggling, you talk about the struggle and then you hope that, other even nonprofits can get involved and help. A beautiful example is the wildlife center down in Punta Gorda. It wasn't like Hurricane Helene didn't flood them. Hurricane Milton came along and took away their walls, and they needed bedding, and they needed, they didn't even have the basics left. And so I went over to Englewood, and they were giving away bedding and old towels, and I could bring it over to the Wildlife Center and be like, hey, this was on your list. So, I knew about it. So here you go. And it didn't, it obviously didn't fulfill everything they need, but I was able to do a tiny little bit because they expressed what their needs were. And it's a really tough time for them now. And hopefully the article that's written will get others to understand, how losing everything has affected the injured wildlife.
So we've got about 15 minutes left, but you said article, and I was going to save this for the end of the show, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit now because we had one of our commissioners in Northport pass away, a prior commissioner, Tom Jones, and there was a fantastic article in the newspaper today about Tom. And Don, our hearts are with the Jones family. I love Tom and I love Don. And
well, Tom was a member of Kiwanis, so he did the golf tournament, he did the fishing tournament, and he did so much more. And we didn't, it was crazy. In Kiwanis, we didn't do politics. So it was perfectly fine that a commissioner was a member. We've always had a member. Rue Berryman was a member. Dick Lockhart was a member. Vanessa Carasone, Alice White, and Dave Garofalo, all Kiwanians, all commissioners. But again, what was neat about when they were there, they could say, hey, do you mind if I get the fire chief to come and speak? And then, I could ask questions like, how many calls do you guys get in a year? And when you hear, let's say the police chief says, we get 77,000, my brain is like, holy cow, there's 97,000 people who live here. 77,000, that's more than half of our community in calls in 1 year. There's nothing political about that. That's us learning about our local community. And, then our club for September 11th, we go to the police and fire departments and we give them cakes from Publix, homemade cards made from Glen Allen, Cranberry, Atwater, the Key Club. And we say, we never forget. And then people like myself are like, so how many calls for service did you get? They're like 97,000. And you're like, but again, it gives you this respect and understanding. And so Dawn, she worked for the fire department, Dawn Jones. And so she had, check this out. We wanted to give stuffed animals to kids if they had been, through a fire and they lost their toys and stuff. At least Kiwanis could give the fire police officers some toys. I'm sorry, some stuffed animals to kind of hug on and love on. Well, Dawn comes back and says, look, they can't be something, it has to be sewn in. And I'm like, why? Well, because a kid could choke on the eyeball or the nose. And you're like, I would have never known that. So it's the details.
Let me tell you my moment. And this is more along the lines of my granddaughter, Ellie Rose, who I was the babysitter for the first year of her life. So there's the hat that Don Jones gave my granddaughter. And it's on my shelf now as a keepsake. And when Ellie comes and visits, she actually tries to put it on her head now, which it doesn't it has a hard time fitting because she's 6 now. But it's even for her, it's like, I remember that. I remember getting that. And so it's this, she's got her own shelf. The Jones family, they've done a lot for our community over the years. And I wanted to make sure that I brought Tom's name and Don's name and the Jones name into the fold. And I didn't talk to you about this ahead of time, but you've had a lot of contact with them over the years, and our hearts definitely go out to them. And I'm so glad that they did an article on him. So please read the Sun newspaper today about Tom Jones. There's a really great article in there about him and the importance he was to our community. So anything you want to add to that?
What I want to add is that is exactly it. That is local journalism. You're not going to find that in like great big papers about people that you knew personally. Like the last time I saw Tom was at the city's 60th anniversary. And I love this smile. I took a photo of him. I wished him well. But the thing is, yeah. So locally, that's, that is the heart and soul. And the paper has, like, I always kind of say this, and so do other reporters. Sometimes we write about stories that you'll never read elsewhere because we literally care about that group, that person, that subject. And like, for example, last night at the school board meeting, they gave their finance director was with the school, the district for, I believe it's 20 years. And they gave him a certificate and a plaque, and they kind of loved on him. And so it was really funny is they called him Mr. No. So I walked over to him and I'm like, hey, for journalism purposes, is that Mr. KNOW or Mr. NO? He looks at his grandson, 7 years old, and he goes, so which one is it, son? And he's like, well, give it to me in a sentence. And I'm like, your grandpa said no candy, or your grandpa knows a lot. And he's like, grandpa said no candy. And I'm like, all right, so it's Mr. NO. And that's how I'll report it in the paper. And again, and when we say, well, who cares? The school district cares, all the people that he knew, all the people that he impacted. And so, yeah, we do have to say that when we're writing. Who cares? What's the most important thing? Why am I writing this? Can I get more photos in? I will tell you, veterans are another really huge component of why journalism is important. I get to meet several different veterans every year, and any one of my editors will tell you, I fight to get my photos on the front page. I fight to get these people who have served our country. I watched a gentleman in fully dressed World War II veteran. I mean, I thought he was going to pass out. It was just so hot. But he sat there in his wheelchair with such honor and dignity. And I knelt down and I framed up that photograph. And then I put it in, like, please run this. Please show people locally about the people who went and fought for our country. And again, that's better than like a 60-second TikTok video sometimes. Just take a few minutes and I got an eye roll from Evelyn. Because that's important. These are people in your community, and they're worth it.
Evelyn, when you get in the paper one day, soon, you're going to want that print. You're going to want to be in that article, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
She's like, but I'd rather have my own TikTok channel.
Yeah, well, you can work on that
I
too.
do have one on her phone.
A what?
I have a TikTok account on her phone, but I don't have anything on it.
All right. Listen, I think 18 is a good time to start that.
I'm good. I don't want to do that.
Good. All right.
You should interview kids. You would learn a lot, just like I do every day. Hey, that's one other thing. During the hurricane, we were all kind of locked in place, right? But they were trying to figure out, the bosses were like, well, hey, like if somebody's at emergency management, figure that out, right? So what I did was I said to my grandkids, find some kids that I can get permission from their parents and then ask them questions. Holy cow. I learned that the one family had to go out to the barn and open the door and let the horse out through Hurricane Milton. I learned that these kids understand what evacuation orders are. And the saddest thing I learned is, the one kid was on his bed as water is rushing in to his room and he's losing all these items and he only has, his most important things on the bed and then gets evacuated by a big truck, a monster truck. And you can visualize what these kids are saying and you're like, holy cow. And by the way, go back to school on Tuesday. It's incredible.
Yeah. And that the impact that these storms have, and we've all kind of been through the history of a lot of these things and dealt with citizens in different fashions and helped in different ways. But the impacts of our nonprofit organizations within our city and elsewhere, somebody made a comment, boots on the ground, you guys totally rock. Well, I would say that anybody who is boots on the ground, whose first effort is go helping others after a major event like that, that's the true boots on the ground. That's what these nonprofit organizations do. That's what good people are doing who aren't part of the nonprofit organizations. And as much as people want to pick on FEMA, they're never the first boots on the ground. It's always citizens helping citizens, boots on the ground.
I got to tell you this because this is something I've learned. So from Hurricane Ian, I got to say FEMA, very, very, when I say slow in response, I only mean that it's different in the reporting now for Helene and Milton. FEMA is a part of their cohorts. So Sarasota has one and Charlotte has one. Obviously, every community that's been impacted, but they are on the line now. And so I went down to Port Charlotte to their insurance village, right? And there were FEMA officials after Ian, and they were talking about, well, we got to get into Northport. We're going to go to Shannon Staub. And I just said to the person, I said, as a Kiwanian, not as a reporter, if you only go to Shannon Staub and you won't go to the Northport Library, it's like putting FEMA in Georgia. There are people in the older general development section of Northport, maybe you haven't heard of it, I said to him, that cannot get to you at all.
They can't.
So I was like, and get this, it took 3 weeks, but they showed up at the Northport Library to help that section that had been beaten up by Ian. And then boom, for the other hurricanes, now it's more regular. We got to split the city up. We got to put resources here. There, same thing with Englewood. They're getting a little bit more resources now. And they're understanding comfort stations are necessary for people to do their laundry, to take a shower because their house flooded and all. You can't. I didn't realize what salt water does, but holy cow, they were running fires down in Punta Gorda and Englewood because I don't know, the salt water got into cars, it got into electrical systems, and like all this new stuff that we're having to report. So the other thing that government is learning is to stop saying 100-year storm, because that's not true. They're hitting fast and furious.
We've got under a minute left. Can you highlight the dates again of what Kiwanis is doing?
We are doing Breakfast with Santa is the second Saturday of December. It is from 9 to 11. Kids eat free pancakes at the American Legion. Santa's going to be giving out prizes. And then we've got, if anybody wants to do Holiday Card Lane, find me on Facebook and you can put up a card. And we also do a pet expo, a health expo, and a kids fishing tournament the day before Father's Day. Free.
And the bunny.
Oh, and Breakfast with the Bunny.
Yeah.
Yes. This is
like
John
breakfast.
Ross, WKDW, saying thank you for listening in on the radio. I'll be back on the air on, oh gosh, it is Friday already, but I'll be back on the air on Monday. Looking forward to talking with y'all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we're going to end our social media, but thank you for all that you do. And thanks for all that the Kiwanis group does. And if you need to find Kiwanis, they're on social media and they're also on their website. Find out the dates, get connected with them, and help your neighbors. And a lot of them don't even know that Kiwanis is out there, but they are. So spread the word. Thank you for taking your time out of your day, Elaine. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, John.
We'll see
And
you
thank
later.
you for all you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.